Okay, so the last interview document that we're going to be going over is the individual interview that you're going to be doing, one with the mother and one with the father. You're going to be doing them separately, which you're used to. But we're going to go over the new document today because it looks completely different. Before, the individual interview was just a lot of fact gathering and talking about family of origin and marriage and parenting and just gathering their personal information. Most of that is in the questionnaire they fill out by themselves now, and they just provide to you. So again, if there are issues in there, red flags that you saw, then you're going to want to go over it during this individual interview, and you're going to want to talk about those red flags. But aside from that, we have a completely new questionnaire that we're going to be going over with them, the majority of which is going to be exploring their attachment style and how they attach. So, the individual interview questionnaire. Applicant's name, date, and time of interview. The disclosure questions are on this interview packet for you to ask yes or no. Okay, moving on to health. Do you currently take any medications, prescription, or over the counter? Have you ever had any significant health concerns? Have you ever had any significant medical procedures? Pretty plain. Parenting. What are your hopes and dreams for your children? What are or will be your greatest strengths as a parent? What are or will be your greatest areas of needed growth as a parent? How can you grow in this area? Who do you look up to as parenting role models? Who would you go to for parenting support? How did your parents administer discipline? What were their discipline techniques? How do you feel about their techniques? And do you or how will you discipline as your parents, and what discipline techniques do you use? And then it has our little caveat down at the bottom that says if the parents currently spank their children or intend to spank their adopted children, this needs to be discussed with your supervisor. Due to the abuse, neglect, abandonment that many adopted children have faced in their lives, we are strong proponents of more positive discipline techniques. And if families have issues with that, we can provide them with plenty of empirical data and plenty of educational articles on positive discipline techniques and how to incorporate those. But again, that is something you'll want to discuss with your direct supervisor because every state is different in regards to what state requirements are regarding corporal discipline with children. So, what do you look forward to the most about adding a child to your family? What is your biggest fear with the adoption process? After your child arrives home, what are your biggest concerns, fears? What do you feel will be the biggest differences in parenting a child who joined your family through adoption versus a biological child? And again, this is just to get them thinking and making sure that they have realistic expectations. A red flag for this would be if the parent says, oh, I think it'll be fine. I don't have any concerns or fears or worries about how it's going to be afterwards or what the adjustment's going to be like. I think we're good. Because those are very unrealistic expectations. So we want them to be very self-aware and be very educated, and that there are going to be issues and there are going to be difficulties, and that they need to be ready to meet those head on and be dedicated to this child and pushing through the difficult times. Okay, like I said, the majority of this document is about attachment, and attachment in regard to the adoptive parent and how they attach. I'll read the little caveat that we have here by the check mark. It says, in the following questions, we will delve into issues which affect our attachment styles. Some of these questions are very personal and might feel intrusive. However, we would be doing you a disservice if we did not discuss these issues. One of the greatest strengths of an adoptive parent is to be able to recognize our own pasts, traumas we have faced, and our abilities to attach to others. These issues will arise when parenting a child who has faced trauma themselves and is struggling to form attachments. So you can say that to the family, put it in your own words, but say something to that extent, because in here we're going to be talking about attachment. We're going to be talking about how the adopted parent attaches and then how that relates to how they attach to their child. So, the first question, how has your relationship with your parents evolved over the years? You can tell a lot about a person by their family of origin and what their family of origin looks like and what their relationship with their with their parents has been like, and what kind of attachment they have with their parents. How did your relationships with your mother and father differ, and how were they similar? Are there any ways that you try to be like or try not to be like each of your parents? A healthy individual is going to be able to look at their parents and see both positive and negatives. Say, you know what, my parents did this and it was really strong, and I think that was one of their parenting strengths, and I try to emulate that in my own parenting. But you know what, they weren't perfect and they made some mistakes, and here's some of the things that they did that I don't do that. You know, they spanked and I don't agree with spanking, and so I discipline differently. And so being very self-aware is you being able to say, oh, there were strengths and there were negatives, and I learn from both and incorporate those or don't incorporate those accordingly. Did you ever feel rejected or threatened by your parents? Again, we're trying to look into like trauma here. What kind of a relationship was it? Was it an unhealthy one? You know, a lot of people don't think there was abuse in their home because their parents never hit them, but it may have been neglect. It may have been emotional distance where they weren't close. So there are other ways in which they may have been traumatized by their parents. Were there other experiences you had that felt overwhelming or traumatizing in your life, either during your childhood or beyond? Do any of these experiences still affect you? So we want to know what they constitute as trauma and what they feel like they have experienced in their life that may have been traumatic to them. And we never judge whether something was a trauma or not. Trauma is completely in the eyes of the victim of whatever it was. And so somebody might say something that you might look at and be like, well, that's not trauma, that's nothing. Well, if the person identifies it as traumatic, then it was traumatic to them. So we never judge trauma and judge if something was trauma or not. So if a person would ask you that, would say, well, this happened, but I don't know if that was traumatic. You say, well, I'm not the judge of that. The only person that can characterize whether it was traumatic is you yourself, because you experienced it. And was it life-changing for you? You know, did it affect you in a deep level? So having them share those experiences with you. Have you ever been a victim of rape or domestic violence or any other type of assault? If so, how did you process through these events? Did you seek out counseling? How do these experiences affect your current relationship? We have worked with many people who have faced this kind of trauma in their life before. It doesn't preclude anyone from being able to adopt. But we want to ensure that they have worked through it, whether that was through seeking out counseling, whether it was processing through it with a pastor, whatever way they went through to heal from that. We need to know, because we want to be sure that they did heal from that. Because if there are wounds that have not healed, then the way I say it is that we all have trauma, so we all have wounds. If we have worked to heal those wounds, then they are scars. If we haven't worked to heal those wounds, then they're still scabbed. And something might come along, like a trauma in our kid's life, that could still reopen that wound, because it's not healed, it's not a scar, it's a scab, and so it can be reopened. So we want to make sure that these people are to the point where their past traumas are scars, where they're a part of them, they will always be a part of them because it happened, but it doesn't define them, and it's not going to be reopened. You know, if they adopt a child that has been sexually abused, it's not going to reopen and cause them to go through some intense difficulties because of abuse they have faced in their past. So we're looking to make sure that they have faced these traumas and they have worked through them in a healthy way. Do you recall your earliest separations from your parents? What was it like? Did you ever have prolonged separations from your parents? Here we're trying to get a sense of what their attachment level was like with their parents. How did they face separations? Somebody who is really attached is going to have difficulty having separation from their parents. Somebody who isn't as attached might not have as much emotional connection, might not be as emotionally disturbed when there is a prolonged separation from a parent. Has anyone of significant relationship in your life passed away? What was that like for you at the time, and how does that loss affect you now? A lot of people have faced significant loss in their life, and so we want to know how they've processed through that, because they're about to adopt children who have suffered significant loss, primarily in the fact that they have lost their biological parents. And so we want to make sure these parents have gone through that loss process so that they can help their children who are going through that. Karen Purvis, who you all know I love, Karen Purvis said something to the effect of, and I'm going to smear this quote probably, but she said, you can't help a child get to a place of healing unless you have traveled that road yourself. So we want to make sure as adoptive parents that we have gone through that process. If we've had losses, that we've been able to get through them and grieve them appropriately so that we can come alongside our children when they have to go through that process. How did your parents react when you were happy or excited? Did they join your enthusiasm? And this again points to the attachment level with the child's biological, or with the adoptive family's biological parents. Did they have that strong attachment? Did they have that strong support system, that cheerleader in their corner, cheering them on when they were going through things? How did your parents react when you were unhappy or distressed? Did they connect with you in your distress? Again, it's that attachment there. Were they connecting with you when you were hurting, they were hurting? Because you're about to bring in a child that is hurting. So are you going to be able to connect with them when they're hurting? Just to put a small caveat in here, there are 4 different types of attachment styles, and I think it would be good for each person to be familiar with the 4 different attachment styles, and I might do a follow-up training on this in regards to the 4 different attachment styles and what they are, because how you attach to other people is based on what your attachment style is. You directly get your attachment style from your parents and what your parents' attachment style was. That's how they attach to you, so that's then how you're learning to attach to other people. And so that's why we're asking these, because you're going to be very similarly in attachment ways how your parents were to you. So I will most likely do a follow-up to this, a training on the 4 different attachment styles, because I think it would be good to have in conjunction with this when you're preparing to ask these questions of our adoptive families. So we have about 4 more questions. I'm going to stop this, and then I'm going to pick it up in the next video.